What keeps a man going when quitting would be so much easier? Welcome into Dad's Place. We're glad you joined us. If you could help us out, hit that button down on the bottom that says subscribe. That really helps us out. We appreciate it. We appreciate you being here more than that. Hope we have something for you to walk away with and say, hey, I might have learned something. Sean, welcome in, bud.
How's it going?
It's going good. So have you ever had that thing, that one thing that quitting might have been a whole lot easier than keep going?
Most of my life, I've just kept on keeping on, I guess is how you would say it. But I have uttered those two hideous words before in my life. It's been a long time since I've done it, but I have done it. And when you say it, it just resonates different because it's a failure. It's a failure for you to look past your current circumstance in the moment. And when you say those two words.
What are those two words? We haven't said those words yet.
I quit.
I quit. Well, what we're talking about tonight is perseverance and what makes us keep going when we feel like quitting. So when you've had those times, Sean, what made you keep going?
Well, the few times that I did say I quit, which was I could count them on one hand, the consequences of those two words went far beyond when you actually said them. So the first time that I remember saying I quit, I was 12 years old, and I was one of those kids that I was short. If you knew me, you would be like, when were you short? But I was short up to the age of 12, and I was very, what I would call, pudgy. So
Okay, wait. Go back. You were short and pudgy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so all right, go ahead. I find that hard to believe, but go ahead.
I was. So it's weird. I was 12 years old, and I was barely 5'4", and I weighed 171 pounds. No joke.
Oh.
And the reason Jim's face looks like it does is because he knows what I look like now.
Yeah, he's not 5'4" and 171 anymore. That's for sure.
But that's what I was, and I went out for seventh grade football team, and I'll be honest with you, I just couldn't hack the conditioning. The first time, I just I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't push my fat little chubby legs that I had. I just couldn't push them to do what the coaches required us to do. And man, when you say that, you walk off the field, and you got to say it in front of your peers, which sucks. It just does. And so you got to go to school the next day, and you got all your your peers, and a lot of them are your seventh grade. A lot of them are your buddies, and you gotta walk around with that stigma of being a quitter. And that sucks. I mean, it just sucks.
They are not going to let you forget it at that age, are they?
No, and it was, and I didn't really get ribbed a lot for that. Honestly, I really didn't. Looking back on it, but it left such a lasting impression upon me of you let a little bit of sweat, you let a little bit of hurt, you let a little bit of vomit hanging off of your face mask. And yes, moms, if there's any women listening to this, they actually did that back in the archaic days. They did that. But fast forward 1 year later, and I still hadn't grown a lot. But I was going to die or make the football team, and I did. But those two words, man, just left a really. They're almost, and everybody is different, and I get that. But with me, the two words I quit, they're almost internal scars that you just cannot get rid of. I guess that's the best way for me to describe it. What I felt was
Yeah.
that it was a blade that cut deep, man.
Yeah. I know there's lots of times I wanted to quit. My dad had a rule, and that was whatever I started, he didn't care what it was, if it was sports or if it was a group or whatever it was. His rule was if you start it, you finish it. And I mean, that was a hard and fast rule in my house. There was no way I could start a sport and not finish it. He wouldn't allow it. That was just it. He allowed it one time, and that was because the sport, their games were on Sunday, and it was interfering with church. And that's the only time he let me quit uh, because, well, I didn't quit, but I guess all my friends thought I did because he said no. Uh, I guess he didn't really catch the whole idea that the games were on Sunday, but when I started it. But anyways, just a side note, you know how big I was when I was 11, right?
Bigger than 5'4", 171.
I was 6'3", 225 at 11. So
Well,
you would say,
total side note to my story. So I didn't grow a lot my eighth grade year. Not really. I didn't grow out any, but I didn't grow up any either.
yeah,
So we leave. We go from eighth grade where I grew up. Eighth grade, you were leaving middle school. Ninth grade, you were going to high school.
all right.
So
Same
I
with me.
kid. So I kid you not. So when I left eighth grade, I was almost 5'6". I'd almost cracked 5'6". The last day of eighth grade. This is honest truth. When I walked into first day, ninth grade, 2.5 months later, I was 6'1".
I had that same growth spirit spurt, but mine was between fifth and sixth grade, I think. Yeah,
People didn't even recognize me.
yeah, yeah.
It
Wow.
was it was it was just weird.
Um, so when you had to quit at that age, that's traumatic. But did you have a time when you were an adult and man, something was just breaking you down? You thought whatever it was not going to end. Um, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to put you on the spot. You can choose to answer or not. When you decided to get a divorce the first time, what was that like?
Oh, that was that. Well, before you said that, and the question you asked me, that was that was the big kahuna of quitting as an adult, because that's what it is. I mean, so so I heard a pastor named Greg Laurie say this. I've heard him say this. I don't know how many times in his different messages. So the term irreconcilable differences. That's actually a really, really long term to say I quit, because in most relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's marriage, whether it's employee, employer, doesn't matter what relationship it is, you pretty much have an irreconcilable difference every day at some point. But what it is in my first marriage, whenever I threw in the towel, is I quit. Is my ex-wife, she quit too. But talking about me, yeah, we quit. We both, and obviously divorce, especially when a child is involved, it it leaves a lifelong lasting scar. It might not be internal like it was for me at 12 with football, but it leaves a void, man. And then you can sit back and you can look at it and you go, okay, you Monday morning, if you're worth your salt, then you start Monday morning quarterbacking yourself and going, okay, where did I go wrong? Or now most men, because we get all pissy, we go, oh, where did she go wrong? She didn't do this, she didn't do that. But if you're actually a man, then you actually start Monday morning quarterbacking yourself and going, okay, how did it get here? How did we get to this point to where you say I quit?
Well, and that's why we're talking about perseverance tonight, because you know perseverance has many sides to it. I think there's obviously the negative connotations that I quit. There's also the other side of that, that you have you refuse to quit, and that you know that perseverance is that I am not going to quit. I'm going to keep going when everybody around me tells me to stop. When everybody tells me I should quit. Um, and I think that's probably how I view perseverance more often than as the negative part. Uh, I guess you could do both. I guess that's fair. But when you think of the perseverance on the positive side, who or what do you think of, or do you think of anything in your life that is something that you just kept going and going and going, and you just refuse to stop? Some people would refer to that as being stubborn. Um, I don't think so. I think you refuse to quit.
Well, we could do a whole podcast on stubborn.
We could do a year on the stubbornness of men, I believe. But
Yeah. Well, so for everybody listening, so my co-host sent me a text message today and asked me a really, really dumb question for him to ask, because he knew the answer before he typed it. Was I going to have a definition for perseverance? And of course I do. So I'm going to read the actual definition of perseverance.
okay,
I think it's a good definition.
okay,
It's the continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, failure, or opposition. And the second part of that is the action or condition or an instance of persevering in the face of a trial or difficulty. I like that,
yeah.
because that's basically what perseverance is you got to push through.
Well, I was trying to think of a time that perseverance was an issue with me because I wanted to quit, and I. This is kind of a really dumb example, I think, but uh, probably after I was married about 5 or 6 years, I think I'd met a guy that we were doing some work together, and he was a contractor, and we got to talking one day, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've got this wood shop that I build stuff. That's kind of how I relax, as I build stuff." And um, I was asking him, I said, "Well, like, what do you build?" He's like, "Well, you ought to come by and see it sometime." So I went by there one time, and man, this guy built some beautiful, just gorgeous furniture. I mean, kind of stuff that most people probably couldn't afford, but I couldn't afford it at the time. These were just beautiful, like made out of walnut and all this stuff. Um, so he said, "Well, why don't you just come up with something you want to make, and you can use my shop here." I thought, well, okay, that'd be cool. I'd like to make something out of wood. And he said, in fact, I've got some old cherry wood. You just grab as much as you need, make what you want. So I went home and I came up with this grand idea to make this bed. I was going to make this bed out of beautiful cherry. And so I told him what I was going to do. He's like, "Hey, man, I'll tell you how to get in the shop. You just go by anytime you want." I worked on that stupid bed for, I don't know, it seems like 2 years. And by the end of it, I was ready just to take a match to it and burn that thing. Because it's like everything I did, I didn't have the experience, one. Uh, so every time I would do something, I'd mess it up. I'd mess it up. And so many times during that, I thought, what am I doing? This is not even a hobby of mine. I just opened my mouth and here I am in this guy's shop making this or trying to make this bed. But I just remember, I mean, I dreaded days that I knew I had to go over there. I wanted to quit on that thing several times, but I'm glad I kept it going and I kept working through it. And that's kind of a silly story, but I think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about perseverance, because you're doing stuff that maybe you'd like to quit on. Maybe you'd just like to throw in the towel and say, okay, I'm done. I'm done. But there's that certain part of you that I think you either have it or you don't. And that is, you know what? I'm not going to be beat. I'm just not. It doesn't matter what it takes. It doesn't matter what it requires of me. I'm just not going to be beat. So I guess my question is, how do you find that?
I think a word that goes hand in hand with perseverance is resilience. I think they're first cousins with one another. And I think when you look at somebody who has persevered through circumstances in their life that were not good, or in a lot of cases with a lot of people, they're horrible, they're atrocious, and you wonder, how are you even standing upright today? And they just keep on grinding, they just keep on going, they just keep on, one step, in front of the other. When we were talking about doing discipline last week and perseverance this week, it's funny because have you ever seen the movie Men of Honor? Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about Navy diver Carl Brashear. And I watched that movie last Tuesday, I think. And at the very end, if you haven't seen the movie, sorry, I'm going to spoil it for you. But at the very end, in front of basically a Navy Board of Review, he has a severe injury, and there's a certain weasel captain that's trying to get him thrown out of the Navy. And what he has to do is he's a underwater diver. He's a demolitions expert. And he has to walk 12 steps in full gear, to include the hat, the suit, everything that he would be underwater with. And if I remember right, in the movie, it weighed almost 300 pounds, just the suit. And he has a debilitating injury with his leg. And, as he takes a few steps, he gets to like step 8, and, he kind of, weeble wobbles a little bit. And De Niro, who started out, as a racist in the movie, he nicknamed him Cookie, because obviously Cuba Gooding Jr. is black. He goes to the front and gets in his face and just gives him the most, I don't know, he just, the instructions and he's just hollering at him about, no, you're going to do this. You're going to finish this. And he actually uses that. And he walked those last 4 steps. He gets him to the point where he makes that final step. And I thought about that as I'm watching that, and what popped in my head was perseverance. There's a challenge in front of this guy that was just incredible odds for him to be able to be here. But you know what? He would not quit. He would not stop. He would not listen to the voices of either in his head or the voices of people around him going, you can't, you can't, you can't. And I think people that persevere and are resilient, they have an innate ability, whether it's instinctively in them or it's learned or a combination of the two. They have the ability to drown out the noise of what's going on around them from a negative standpoint, whether it's from a person, whether it's from a circumstance, whatever it's from. They just have an ability somewhere in here to just remove themselves from that. And I think that's what, when I think of perseverance, that's what I think of. And it just so happens that I was watching that movie and I'm like, man, that is a great example of persevering.
Yeah, and I think you're right, though. I think it's that ability to finally come up and say, what other people say, what other people think don't matter, that you can block out all that noise. Because let me tell you, people around you don't want you to succeed. They just don't in general. And I don't know. The fall of man, I guess, is what causes that. But there's a lot of people who are, they're jealous to see your success. They're jealous to see you succeed at something, or it makes them feel worse about themselves when you succeed. And I think that's really the main thing. But you said you were talking about blocking out the noise, and I think that's one of the most important things when you're going through something that it may not be going well, but you know it will at some point. I think of Thomas Jefferson. I mean, I'm not Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Edison, when he was inventing the light bulb, uh, it's said it's been said that he went through 10,000 variations of filaments and glass to make the incandescent light bulb. And somebody asked him when he finally succeeded at this, how did you keep going when you failed so badly before you succeeded? And he said, let me see if I can get this right. He said, I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways it wouldn't work, or something to that effect. I think that's what he said. Man, that's some, I don't know if you call it positive thinking or just, well, it's perseverance is what it is. Because what he's basically saying is, I know up here it's going to work. I just have to find the combination that does work. And I don't know if there's anything in my life that I would have done 10,000 times waiting for the result to be successful. And I always think of that because I don't know where I heard that quote. I think I was in school early on, and one of the teachers used that to kind of motivate us. And you think about it, that's some perseverance. But you were talking about, we can talk about perseverance in sports, so we can talk about successful people who persevered through something. But then, there's this side of it where, medical issues and things where people just can go years and years and years of suffering, and they just keep going. They have that hope. And I think, I know where my hope comes from. It comes from Christ. But, how I wonder if I was that bad, if I was that sick, how would I keep going? Because, maybe it's a disease or something that's fatal, and there's nothing to treat it with. How do you keep going in situations like that are, you know, they're life and death?
Well, it's funny you said the word hope. So if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're a Christian man, then you know the book of Romans. Or if you don't know it, you should. It's probably one of if arguably the best book in the Bible. But the word hope, Romans 5, 3, and 4, Paul guarantees you that you're going to face trials and tribulations in life. And for context, if you don't know the Bible, if you're not a Christian, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, for context, when Paul writes this, he's in prison. This dude had been beaten, thrown in prison, beaten some more, roasted, got bit by a snake, shipwrecked, blinded. He had a thorn in his flesh that he never actually really told us what the thorn was. A lot of theologians believe it was his eyesight. He couldn't see. So, I mean, he had a lot of junk going on. Oh, and by the way, at one point he was the biggest terrorist that Jesus Christ had. So, I mean, he had a lot of baggage. He had a lot of stuff. But in Romans 5, he writes in verse 3 and 4, and he guarantees you that you will face trials and tribulations in your life. Now, let me break that down and bottom shelf it for people that don't read the Bible. You're going to have a lot of bad crap happen to you in life, and you ain't going to be able to figure it out. But he says, if you persevere, and he actually uses the word persevere, if you persevere, and I'm going to read it, then your perseverance will produce character, and your character will produce eternal hope. Now that's right out of the Bible. And character is, the definition I looked up is moral excellence, mostly due to coming through a human trial or tribulation. So, to answer your question about health issues, I can draw from my grandfather. My grandfather was a strapping big man, just a big, brawny, dude. I mean, he was a man's man. When he died, he looked like a shriveled up prune, and he weighed about 140 pounds, soaking wet.
Yeah.
But, I can also look at my grandfather when he was, looked like a prune. And, I can remember, him talking about how, life was good until it wasn't. And that's okay because his next home, he wasn't going to have a prune body. And don't feel sad for me. Feel sad for the people that don't have the opportunity to go to the next home that I'm going to. So, I draw from people like that. My grandfather, just lived a man's man life. And at the end of it, disease and things like that had racked his body. But you know what? He didn't cry about it, man. He didn't cry about it. He didn't whine about it. He just, he dealt with it. And it's like, hey, man, sometimes you're the window, sometimes you're the bug. And he just persevered.
Well, you were talking about your divorce, or I talked about your divorce, and you finished the conversation. But um, I'm not divorced, but I did go through that with my parents, and I often, I think I kind of blame them for not persevering through whatever difficulties they were going on, because by them not doing that, by them not working it out, it affected me. And I think that a lot of times when we don't persevere, we may not see how it affects other people. But let's talk about, the dad who's always given up on something. He's trying something and he just gets to the point, I quit. I'm not doing it. Well, he's got kids watching him. He's got other people watching him. So I think when we persevere, we're not only handling the challenge to ourselves, we're also possibly lifting up somebody else around us, because they see that we got through something that they probably think they never could. And I know I've seen that in other people, and it's really encouraged me, because I'm thinking, wow, I don't know how they did it, but they made it. And I hope that if I ever face that one day, I can make it too. So um, I think that's challenging, that to watch somebody persevere, especially like the medical. I watched my dad die too, and that was tough. That was really tough for me, and But he was kind of like your granddad, and making jokes up to the last 24 hours when he couldn't really speak anymore, but he's still cutting jokes and giving us a hard time. And he had some difficult things to go through, but I was encouraged by watching him how he handled that, and he I call that perseverance, and I hope I have that same perseverance when I face that situation as well. So, how would you tell somebody who quits very easily how to change their life around? Because I see some folks that just, they just, it's easier for them to say I quit than I'm going to try again.
Well, our culture certainly doesn't help. Um, from a relational standpoint, from a difficulty standpoint, from a entitlement standpoint, our culture in 2026 does not help the terms perseverance, and character and resilience, because we make it, everything about our lives are easy. And I'm speaking of America. I'm not speaking of other nations. And I know there's somebody out there right now going, hey, bro, you don't even know my life. My life sucks. And it might suck. But compared to the rest of the world, you have it easy. But what I'm talking about is our culture. If you don't like something, you just throw it away. If you don't want to be in a relationship anymore, you just throw it away. If you don't enjoy something anymore, you just throw it away. Unless there's something in here that speaks to you that says, I don't care what this takes. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care to what extent I got to go to. I'm not quitting until whatever is done, whether it's a degree, whether it's a job, whether it's a physical fitness goal. I don't care what it is, whether it's a marriage. And by the way, something you said earlier, I want to touch on real quick. Being a dad, especially a dad that's married, brother, that's perseverance every day. In 2026, especially if you got a daughter, that's real perseverance. Then that's with an asterisk.
Yeah.
So if you're a man
Well,
out there listening, and you're a dad, and especially if you're a dad and you're married, and even if you're not, but if you're a dad and you're getting after it and you're doing right for your kids, man, bravo, brother, bravo.
I think I want to encourage folks though that even when you are feeling like quitting, look back and see how far you've come from when you started whatever it is you started. Let's take marriage for example. Um, marriage is tough sometimes. Then you reach a point at. I think every marriage reaches that point where each of them are asking, "Now, why did I get married? Uh, is this the life I wanted? Is this the life I expected?" But a lot of people do work through that, and they keep going, and they keep going. So, just as married people go, if you're in that boat right now and you're in that struggle period where you're wondering why you got married, hang in there. There's a lot of benefits to it if you keep going. And I think that's the perseverance. The other part of perseverance is that the payoff at the end of whatever it is you're persevering through, if it's a job, if it's a marriage, if it's parenthood, if it's however you want to classify that for yourself. I think when you get to the end, you find out how strong you really are. You find out that your ability to handle things is much higher than you thought it was. I've used this term several times. Uh, I always tried to motivate people that worked under me to go farther than they think they could, because at the end, when they figure out that they could go farther than they thought they could, and you and I've spoke about this before too, what a beautiful time that is, because that light bulb goes off and all of a sudden you can see it on their face. And you're like, yeah, I got this. I know we say that in a negative term sometimes, but sometimes it's a positive too. Yeah, they did. They got it. They got it. They picked it up, and now they have a new skill that'll carry them through life. So, uh, I guess I just want to encourage some folks that if you're going through something that's difficult, that's hard, that it in the end, it's going to be worth it, every bit of it. And I think we don't tell people that often enough when they're going through these things, or they're really struggling, or they're feeling like they want to quit. I think a lot of times we give them the excuses to go ahead and quit. We don't encourage them to finish it out. Um, we see people struggling, and I think in many ways we're soft on them. And I don't mean that as a negative, but I think sometimes we just don't encourage them to see things through. And I think if we did a little bit more of that in a loving way, I'm not talking about, telling somebody they're an idiot. I'm talking about encouraging them that it's tough right now. You're going to make it through this. You're going to see an end to this. And when you do, you're going to grow from it. That next speed bump down the road, it's going to be a little bit smaller than this one, but you got to make it through this one first.
Well, it's hard to see. It's hard to see. It's hard to see the sunshine when you're in quicksand. Years ago, I never watched the University of Oregon football team, but years ago, they had a quarterback named Marcus Mariota, and I remember watching him the year he won the Heisman Trophy. And Oregon had a saying that I think is so pertinent to perseverance. And it was a slogan for their team that year. And I don't know if they come up with it or they, hijacked it from somebody else, but it was called Win the Day. It was just win the day. And their coach the head coach at that time, come on, and they had asked him in one of the little segments, why did y'all adopt the slogan "Win the Day"? And he said, well, it's a persevering, and this is what he said, it's a persevering slogan in that we figure we're going to have between 70 and 90 snaps every single game. And we take it one snap at a time. And your job on that snap is the win the day. And I thought about that when he said that, and I was like, wow, that's pretty profound. But it's so true in life as a whole and I know we make plans of, we're going to go on vacation and we're going to have, $28 million in our 401k when we retire. And, I know we make plans for all that. And, all of our kids are going to Stanford. I get all that. But sometimes if you literally just break it down to, hey, let me deal with today. The Bible actually talks about sufficient is today for your problems. Worry about tomorrow. You got enough of crap going on today.
And forget yesterday.
Right, and forget yesterday. And that's so true to persevere in life because, man, there are no four-seam fastballs coming every day in life, man. You got curveballs, sliders, and changeups coming at you, from the time the alarm clock goes off until you lay your head back on the same pillow 15, 16 hours later. It's just nonstop. So you just got to put one foot in front of the other, and whatever is in front of you, you just got to adopt the mentality of, hey, you know what? This is a suck fest right now. The military, a lot of the special operations, they have this saying called embrace the suck. I love that. It's because it's so true. It's right now, life just sucks, but embrace it, push through it, grunt, scream, cry, holler, spit, whatever you got to do. kick it in the gonads, whatever you got to do to make it to tomorrow morning. And guess what? It's going to start all over again tomorrow. And you just keep grinding.
Well, I think that mentality is what we don't do for people sometimes. I think we almost give, and I don't think we do this intentionally, but we see people struggling, and either A, we try to diminish the struggle, or B, we try to help them find a way out of the struggle. And the fact is, sometimes the struggle is what the lesson is. The struggle is the thing that we need to let them go through, or ourselves, that we have to struggle through something to find out what we're made of, find out what we can handle, find out what our limits are, to find out how strong of a person we really are. Um, I'm trying to think of something I went through that was a struggle for me, and I guess I've been through it several times, and I can't even pinpoint one right now. But I have I treat struggle as, all right, it's here today. I'll deal with it. I know other people, man, you get them one step off of the program for the day, and it's over. I mean, everything's over. Um, so, but I think those kind of people have other people around them that are always giving them an out instead of saying, stick with it, hang in there, keep going, don't stop now. It's going to suck. Like you said, embrace the suck, because there's so many people who they quit before they even get a chance to find out how much they can handle. And I think that's what perseverance really is. It's an opportunity, not it's an opportunity to find out how strong you are. And every time you persevere a little bit more and a little bit more, man, by the end of it, you can handle pretty much everything that's going to be thrown at you in life. And we talked before about parents who do everything for their kids. Man, let your kids struggle. Let him have to him or her figure out some stuff,
Let
because
them fail.
let him fail, because every time you step in to save the day, you're just putting off the inevitable of them being an adult and not knowing how to fail. You know, it, the first time they fail, they're gonna fall out.
And
And
and statistics and data would lead you to believe that right now we have an epidemic in our country of 18 to 30-year-olds that are experiencing exactly what you're talking about.
well, Sean, it's not just the 18 to 30-year-olds. I see people our age, people close to our age, that how they've gotten through life, I don't know, because every time something gets a little tough or something gets a little out of whack, they they just kind of fold up and go into the little bug mold and just kind of tuck and roll and wait for the storm to pass. And I don't I don't know how they get through life like that.
Well, I mean, I'll go back to the Romans 5, verse 3 and 4. And I'll go back to the second word, the word in between perseverance and hope is character. You played sport. I mean, roughly, how many football coaches did you have in your life, roughly?
7.
Okay. How many of
7.
the
Yep.
how many of the 7 football coaches did you ever have? Did you ever hear them say, "Boys, we're going to win every single game, and because we win every single game and we beat the crap out of the opposing team, your character meter is going to go through the roof."
I only had one who talked that way, and we won the championship.
Character, character, golly, that's such a huge word, because you think you have it, and then when you actually really start diving into the word character, you realize, man, I suck. Like I suck bad.
Yeah, but
Um,
I go back to your example you just used though. We had a and this was when I was on a Pop Warner team, which I don't know if everybody knows what that is. That's probably ages 10 to 14. But this coach, he he had expectations. And as kids, some of us weren't used to that. Some of us were like, "Oh yeah, he's just talking." No, he wasn't talking. He had every expectation of what he said, and that was, "We're going to win every game." Absolute expectations. Now, I also was on the other side where I had a coach who seemed to baby the whole team, and guess what? It was just the opposite. We were the worst team in the league, and but he didn't have expectations of people working hard and toughing it through. I mean, he really kind of, a good guy, I think, but he made it easy on us. He made it so we didn't have to struggle. We didn't have to work as hard as this guy that we did go to a championship with. I mean, he accepted nothing but struggle, and you better go home as tired as you possibly be because you worked as hard as you can. And he didn't. Excuses weren't an option with this guy.
did
And
you did you win?
the guy that was talking about how strong character, yeah, we won every game and won the championship.
Did you work hard?
Worked my butt off, and I was one of the that's I was one of the younger ones on the team. I just happened to be a whole lot bigger than most people my age, so I got to start. But man, I worked my butt off that year, and I don't think I ever worked that hard at that sport at any other level. I just don't. I mean, it sounds like, okay, yeah, he's kind of exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. This guy was just, his expectations were, you're going to be the best, and I don't accept anything else. And that kind of gets you past those moments where you think you can't make it. I remember thinking sometimes, you're out there and you're thinking, man, I can't get through this. I can't get it. And here comes this coach. He's like, you're going to make this. You're going to do it. You're not going to fail. You will not fail. You will not fail on my field. And that's how he talked to us. But that gets in your head. That gets in your head. And you're like, I can't stop. I can't give up. I can't step away because if I do, it's just not acceptable. There's no option for you to stop, quit, or give up.
Well, you just said something right there. So as this guy's encouraging you in a aggressive manner, as he's telling you what you are going to accomplish, like,
Yeah,
but you said something right there that I think we need to touch on just for a second. Is it got into you made this statement, it got into my head.
yeah.
Okay, well, what got into your head? What got into
That,
your head was, this guy is not about failure, and he believes in me, and I'm going to push through. And the reason I say that is because, do you know who lies to you more than anyone else?
well, I know we've discussed this before, and I got it wrong, but you're right. We do. We tell
You.
ourselves how bad we are.
You lie to
Yeah.
yourself. So most people that I see, like for instance, I'll go back to when I was 12 years old when I quit that year because I was Humpty Dumpty. Now, was I completely out of shape? Most definitely. Was it Florida in the summer and I was dying of I thought I was in the seventh layer of hell? Yes. But at the end of the day, when all was said and done, who quit? I did. I made the decision that, you know what? This is too tough for me to grind my way through. Now, Here's the caveat. 1 year later, wasn't much bigger, wasn't quite Humpty Dumpty, but I was still had a little Humpty, but not so much Dumpty. But my mentality the next year was, no, you don't understand. I'm going to play on this team this year. I'm going to start on, which I did. I'm going to start on this team this year, or I'm going to die as an eighth grader. Because myself told myself, you're going to do this. You're not going to quit. You're not going to throw in the towel. And it just, from that point going forward, except for my, which was obviously, a catastrophic failure, my first marriage. But that's really, after 12 years old, I haven't really quit much since. Like I can count on one hand how many, you could take my thumb and my pinky away, how many times I've quit since that day.
Well, don't you think you learned early on that quitting may have been easy in the moment, but it was hard to deal with later?
Oh, it's man, it is, I can only speak for myself, but I have talked to other people that have gone through kind of the same situation. But I can only speak for myself. Man, when you say I quit, that is soul crushing. I don't know how else to describe it. It just crushes and you're right. In the moment, it's like, now I can go get me a Twinkie and a Mountain Dew, and I'm just good to go because I'm not out there, suffering. But then the next day comes, it's when the sun rises the next day, and you're like, oh crap, what did I do? And it's true.
Or that,
It's true.
or if it's sports we're talking about, it's that when those guys go play that game and you're not there, or you're sitting in the stands watching it, saying, "I could have been out there with them."
Well, when you're divorced, when you go through a divorce, and then, you know, you had your kid with you and you had your wife with you, and now it's 7:30 on a Tuesday night, and it's you and J, L, and B wall, because those are the three walls you're looking at. Well, guess what? That sucks, and you realize I just threw in the towel, man. I just, what? It got difficult. It got hard. She wanted blue towels. I wanted green towels, so I threw in the towel. And then it's just, those words, man, they're soul crushing. And there are times when removing yourself from a situation is the answer. In those situations, though, you're not quitting. You're removing yourself from a situation that is just not healthy. But to say I quit, let's be honest, guys, over 90% of the time, you just didn't have the stones to get it done. Let's just be honest.
Well, let me ask you on the other side of that. At what point do we know we need to quit? You just mentioned a little bit that sometimes there's those situations where they're just not going to resolve themselves, and sometimes we just got to say, you know what,
Three
it's
things:
time. What's that?
illegal, unethical, or immoral. When you're facing one of those three situations, you're not quitting, you're removing yourself from a situation that you're about to go down that is going to end you in a whole lot worse place than just saying I quit. Remember that: illegal, immoral, or unethical. Those three things, man, flee,
I think,
flee.
but do you think there's times when, you know, let let's put it this way: I'm never going to be a ballet dancer. I'm just not. I don't care how bad I want to. I don't care how bad I work at it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It'll never happen. Uh, I'm just not built that way. So, and I would commend somebody who would try to do something like that, that they just will never happen. They don't have the physique for it. They don't have the capability to do it. Just not going to happen. But at what point do we say, okay, I gave it my best shot. I didn't accomplish it, and that's okay because I did my very best. I'm not very good at that. Uh, I just want to keep going and going and going. And but I think there is a point that even in perseverance, I think you reach a point that you have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, not that I failed, but that I tried as hard as I could. I did everything I could do. I did all the right things. The fact is, it's just not going to happen. When do we reach that point, and how we deal with that?
Well, I think failure and quitting is two different things. I think we need to lay the groundwork for that. When you quit something, did you really fail? How do you know?
Yeah,
I mean, how do you know? Um, but if you failed at something, I mean, if there's a you know for, you know if there's a race, just pick a race, and you train like a dog, man. You train and you run and you train. We'll just say a 15K, which is 9.3 miles. So it's a 15K. And the top 10 males and the top 10 females go to the national finals to represent America in the Summer Olympics 2265. And man, you train, like you work your butt off, and just you eat right, that your preparation's right, and you finish 11th. You failed, but you didn't quit.
yeah.
You didn't quit. You busted your butt, and on this particular, if you run the race tomorrow, you may finish fourth, and you may be one of the 10. But today, you failed. I mean, are I'll say it like this: people that quit are failures. They didn't fail. They're failures because they quit. If you finish 11th in that race, you're not a failure. You did fail, but you're not a failure because you got out there and you worked your tail off and you prepped and you got ready. And on that particular day, 10 people were just a little bit better than you were.
Well, I absolutely agree that failure and quitting are two different things. But like my situation, uh, being a ballet dancer, that was just the most obscure thing I could think of, by the way. But uh, I am not built to be a ballet dancer. I am built more like a large truck than a fine tuned Ferrari. So how do we tell people, or how do we know when whatever we're going after, it doesn't matter how long we persevere at it, it doesn't matter how long we try at it, it's just not going to happen. I think you can learn even from that. I don't think you're losing out on life because you go after something like that. But there is a point where you just have to say it didn't happen. I didn't even get in the race. Uh, how do we know?
In between this thing and this thing, you should have a brain. And at some point, like for instance, I'm about to be 54 years old. I'm never going to run the 15K that I ran as a 34-year-old. It's not going to happen. But I also have enough brain cells to realize it's not going to happen. You have to be
Yeah.
realistic in your assessment and your preparation and your mindset of things.
Didn't you ever want to do something though that you knew you couldn't do?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, I always I always wanted to ride a motocross bike like like when I was growing up. I was a big. I could go all the way back to the '80s. I mean, I was a big Kevin Windham, and then Ryan Villapoto and Eli Tomac, and those guys were amazing. I always wanted to know, man, what is it like to be on a supercross track or a motocross track and be able to ride that bike. And the other thing is I've only, I mean, you know this, Jim, you know this about me. The sport of baseball, I have a passion for it that's very high. And I always wanted to know what it was like to stand in a major league baseball park and have that ball in your hand and, mano y mano, me and you. But you know what? I failed at that. I didn't work hard enough. I didn't persevere. I didn't put the work in necessary to get to that point. Therefore, I failed. I didn't quit. I didn't quit, but I did fail. But I'm also realistic to understand while I could have put the work in, there's a 0.0001% chance you get to a major league team. However, I didn't put the work in to try. So in that aspect, I failed. I didn't quit, but I failed.
Yeah, and I think we've all I think we've all done that in life, and I think there's also times where we did not put the work in, and not just in sports, but whatever it is, we did not put the work in because we didn't want to fail. So it was much easier not putting the work in and not having the opportunity to fail than it would have been putting all the work in and then failing. You know, that fear of failure that so many people live with. I've done it. Um, I can go back to a few stories where I just didn't put the work in. And if I'd put the work in, maybe I would have had a chance. Maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. But I didn't want the failure.
I'm going to say this. So I heard this statistic yesterday. I was listening to a podcast about this subject, and this statistic was thrown out there, and it's golly, it's just a horrible statistic. But you talk about quitting and not putting the work in. The number one precursor for incarceration, addiction, and death among young men today is fatherless homes. Think about that just for a second. Prison, addict, dead, fatherless homes. You want to talk about a community of quitters? I'm not talking about the divorcee that, does stuff with their
No.
kids all the. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking
Yeah.
about I'm talking about the guys that was there when this kid was created and walked out.
Yeah.
Man, that's the ultimate quitter to me, straight up.
I guess we'll leave it with this, and that is whatever you do, put everything you got into it. And no, it's going to take perseverance. It's going to take a dedication, probably beyond what you estimated when you started. But I can promise you this: if you persevere, whether you are successful or if you fail in whatever it is you're trying to do, you are building the next building block for the next time you have to persevere, and then the next time. And at one of those times, something's going to happen that's going to reach that pinnacle or that point of non failure. But if you quit, if you give up, if you say it's too hard, you're never going to enjoy that part of life. And I don't know what it is for you. It could be some kind of sport. It could be some kind of accomplishment in your job. It could be, it could be being a dad. It could be, you name it. There is no one thing that's the best. We all have our different things, but that's what I would say, Sean, is it's a stepping process, and you're not going to make it the first time. You may not make it the second time, but uh, don't quit until you know you don't have a chance. That's all I can say. Okay, and when you do realize you don't have a chance, walk away not as a failure and not as a quitter. Walk away saying, "I failed at this. I'm going to go find another thing I can be successful at."
And if you're a young man and you're listening to this and you're at home with your parents, or you're away at college, or you're just now getting into the real world, or you're a man that's married to a great woman, a hard-nosed woman, a crazy woman, if you're a man that's got children and you're getting up every day, man, and you're getting after it, it doesn't matter if you're working in a convenience store or you're the CEO of Amazon. I don't care. If you're the type of guy that's getting up every day and you're just grinding and getting after it, man, I'm here to encourage you. Keep on keeping on.
I'd go one step further, Sean, and I'll just tag on to yours, and that is this. If you persevere, even if you don't accomplish what you're going after, you just gave a reason for somebody else to persevere, because people are always watching what we do. And that is, could be your kids, could be your parents, could be your brother and sister, could be a friend. They all see what you tried to do, and they all see how hard you worked at it. And whether you're a success or failure, because of your perseverance, you probably just encourage more people around you than you'll ever know. I'll leave it with that. You got a challenge for this week, Sean?
Self-evaluate, are you really giving, are you giving 99% or are you giving 100%? And some people might say, well, that's only 1%. That's a huge 1%. Make the adjustment, make the change, and then go get it tomorrow.
Sean, thanks a lot. We're going to persevere through this no matter how good or bad we're doing at this.
That's true.
It's true. We keep going. So we're glad that you joined us, and you can laugh at us, learn from us, or just enjoy listening to us. Either one, we'll take it either way. Hey, thanks for being a part of this. This is Dad's Place. Men who step up.